It all started a few months ago when I was on sick leave for a long time due to burnout and decided to escape the daily grind. I went to the mountains in Austria for 2 weeks to take a deep breath, go hiking, and so on. Yesterday, I took the train to the vacation apartment I had rented a few weeks ago, but on the way there, I received an email. Dear Sir or Madame, we have to rebook you at short notice for internal reasons. Please check in directly at our sister house in Muter Street 2, postal code 0349. The house is about half an hour's drive from us. You will be expected there. You will not incur any additional costs. You will just be staying at a different address. Fantastic. Of course, I was traveling without a car, and the way to the vacation apartment was already half an hour's walk from the last train station. Anyway, I decided to take the bus and train hell, as I didn't feel like taking such a long journey with my large suitcase. I replied to the email that I would be arriving later than expected. The reply was, Dear Sir or Madame, under these circumstances, we kindly ask you to use the self-check-in. Click on the button below to use the self-check-in. The key will then be provided for you by requesting a code from an outside key box. I used the check-in button and got a number 0349. Funny, just like the zip code. I've had the pleasure of self-check-in before. It's a nice thing, but it doesn't sound particularly secure. I got on the last bus. There was no one on it except the bus driver. He only nodded once to greet me. Bored, he looked at the road and drove past the bus stops. Nobody got on. The alpine huts passed my gaze. Some looked very similar to the Black Forest houses. I saw the impressive mountains and vast forests. I was looking forward to spending some time relaxing in the Alps. This has usually helped me to find myself again and find peace in my stressful life. But this time was different. I felt an oppressive sense of unease as I looked into the deep forests surrounding the small settlements. After a while, the bus stopped about 4 kilometers from the vacation apartment in question. Annoyed, I set off with my suitcase. I saw the bus turn around and drive away. Apart from a few houses, there was an inn and a small discount store nearby. It was disturbingly quiet, and there was a sign on the pub, closed. Great, it's getting better and better here. I made my way to the address given. With a podcast playing in my ears, I chased away the strange unease that was plaguing me. The sun was about to set, and the smell of spruce and fir trees hit my nose. I took a deep breath and wanted to grin, which was exactly what I had always loved so much. But the grin faded. The rigid trees gave me an eerie impression. The feeling didn't get any better when I noticed that the path led away from the settlement, up a small road through the middle of the spruce forest. I walked faster and faster up the road, hoping to meet a car, a jogger, or a hiker. Nothing and nobody came towards me. Fortunately, I soon reached the address in Muter Street 2. I didn't see another house with the number 1. The house was a classic alpine house, a little outdated. The dark wood gave the building a strange aura, like an animal lying in wait for its prey in the forest. The small key box hung outside. I typed in the numbers 0349. The key felt out, like a chewing gum machine. I opened the door. Inside, it looked very quaint and classic. There was no reception on the lower floor, just 2 locked doors. There were deer antlers hanging on the wall, and some stuffed animals opposite, a marmot, a fox, and a stuffed wild boar's head. They looked as if they had been taxidermied. Right in the face of death, just before the shot was fired, their eyes were wide open, and for a moment, I thought they were chasing me. I shook myself, and goosebumps ran all over my body. I quickly went up the stairs and found the door labeled 1, my room. There were 2 more next to it. The room was also old-fashioned. There was a picture of the Alps on the wall, and the furniture looked almost antique. I had a large room with a bed, a sofa, and a small kitchenette. The bathroom was in a separate room. Exhausted, I lay down on the bed. I turned up my podcast on my cell phone and looked out of the window. I saw a big mountain whose name I didn't know. The sun had set in the meantime. I switched on the small nightlight and closed the curtains. Before I went to sleep, I wrote to a friend about my day and where I was staying. I also sent her a photo of the wild boar. It was getting late, but I didn't get much sleep. I woke up the next morning. My sleep was usually particularly long, especially when I was on vacation. I liked to lie in bed until 12 noon, but the short sleep hardly affected my mood. The only thing I couldn't get rid of was the oppressive feeling. Unfortunately, my cell phone battery was now empty, as podcasts were playing all night, and the phone wasn't charging. While it was on the power, I looked around the house to see if there was breakfast or another guest somewhere. The house was silent, and the downstairs doors were locked. I decided to go back to the estate first to get something to eat. I still had a sandwich from yesterday in my bag, so that would have to be enough for the 4-kilometer walk. 15% battery. Well, better than nothing. Just meant no podcasts. After about a kilometer, I noticed that there was no sound, no people, no birds, no wind blowing, no trees cracking, nothing at all. It almost drove me mad. I kept snorting loudly and started clearing my throat so that I could at least hear something. My steps got faster and faster, and the goosebumps came over me again. I soon realized that I was running and was frightened of myself. I didn't know how long I had been doing this, and more importantly, why. Fortunately, the small settlement finally stretched out in front of me. The windows in the houses made everything seem dark, as if all the light had been sucked out of the rooms. It was unpleasantly quiet here too. The discount store was almost in front of me, and something inside me was afraid that the store door wouldn't open. I was relieved when the automatic door actually opened. I heard the sound of the door rubbing against the floor, and the mechanism kicked into action. Thank goodness. The sound almost brought tears of joy to my eyes. Even though I never found the atmosphere of a discount store particularly pleasant, I felt much more comfortable here. The bright light, the packed shelves, and then I noticed it. There it was again. No noise. The door closed, and there was nothing to hear. No radio, no advertising, no people. No birds, no wind blowing, no trees cracking, nothing at all. It almost drove me mad. I kept snorting loudly and started clearing my throat so that I could at least hear something. My steps got faster and faster, and the goosebumps came over me again. I soon realized that I was running and was frightened of myself. I didn't know how long I had been doing this, and more importantly, why. Fortunately, the small settlement finally stretched out in front of me. Not even the whirring of the neon lights could be heard. I was briefly startled when my cell phone vibrated. Hey, that sounds fucking creepy. Where are you exactly? I want to Google how many stars the store has. My friend replied to the message from yesterday. I sent her the address and strolled through the discount store, picking up a few snacks and a packet of bread in a basket. When I took a quick look at the checkout, I noticed that there was no one there. Only the self-checkout was flashing. I wondered why they even had one in this remote place. Suddenly, I felt a strange sensation on the back of my neck, as if this strange unease that had been bothering me since yesterday was approaching. I turned around, and for a moment, I thought I saw a skirt tip scurry past a shelf. I shuddered again, slowly. I didn't know whether I should be happy about a person or whether I should be afraid of them. I went through everything in my head and thought to myself that there must be a rational explanation for this. I slowly walked along the shelf and looked at the next row. I froze when someone suddenly appeared in front of me, a woman in a light blue striped dress. Her hair was blonde, and her hairstyle was reminiscent of that of women from the 50s and 60s. She was looking at the cereal shelf with her back to me. Rummaging around the shelf, I pretended to be looking for something, but in reality, I was looking over at the woman. She wasn't moving, not a bit. At the other end of the row of shelves was the frozen food section. The store was reflected in the metal decorations at the top, and suddenly I let out a sharp cry. A cereal box, which I had picked up out of stealth, fell to the floor. The woman looked at me through the reflection. She looked me straight in the eye. She smiled, but her eyes were wide open, so wide that the whites of her eyes were visible. She didn't blink. For a moment, I regained my composure and wanted to say something, but my voice failed me. I felt tears of fear streaming down my face. I turned back to her. Her expression didn't change. I put the basket to one side and left the discount store immediately. I breathed frantically and looked around. Hello? Is anyone here? I shouted. No answer. My cell phone buzzed. Hey, did you make a mistake? Austria only has zip codes from 1 to 9. None of them start with 0, and I can't find the address you've given. Panic gripped me. I took one last look back at the discount store to see where the woman was. At first, I saw nothing. But then I looked again into the deep white of her wide open eyes. She was standing by a shelf, just far enough away that I could still see her. Her gaze followed me, and now her white teeth flashed. Fuck my suitcase. I immediately took my heels and ran through the estate. The main thing was to get out of here. Tears ran down my cheeks, and my heart pounded louder and louder. The settlement was now far behind me, and I followed a long road. Whenever I close my eyes, I see the woman's face in front of me. Her wide eyes stare at me. I'm still walking down the street, hoping to finally see a normal person.